6,000 workers by next January. The crash of a Boeing 737 MAX 8 on Sunday in Ethiopia, the second one in 5 months involving the jet maker's best-selling plane. Now, the FAA says the jet is still airworthy, but at least 22 carriers have ordered the jet grounded. Boeing shares down more than 5% today. Still, the Dow rose 200 points. The Nasdaq up 150, thanks to shares of Apple lifting the tech sector. The Wall Street Journal reports a sporting goods chain, Dodell's hired an advisor to help it restructure. That could mean a possible sale. And Captain Marvel took in $153 million at the U.S. box office this weekend for Disney. Biggest opening so far this year. Tom Busby, CNBC.
Indeed knows it's hard to find qualified candidates when you're hiring.
It's like finding a unicorn.
But when you post your job on Indeed, it's easy to find people with the skills you need.
Nurse practitioner, 4+ years experience, acute care certification.
Indeed has a huge pool of amazing candidates and screener tools that help you find your most qualified applicants.
Whoa, an entire short list of unicorns.
Now, get a $50 credit to give your first job posting premium placement at Indeed.com/credit. Terms, conditions, quality standards, and usage limits apply. Additional terms online.
Hey, you're that famous actress. You must travel so much. What's the best site for hotel deals?
Hilton.com.
No. One with crazy savings.
Hilton.com. With their price match guarantee, if you find a better rate, they match it and take 25% off.
No, one with lots of options.
Hilton.com has 16 top hotel brands. Hampton, Hilton Garden Inn, Waldorf Astoria.
Hilton.com. You should totally do their commercials.
Expect better. Expect Hilton.
You're good.
I know, thank you.
Applicable terms and conditions at Hilton.com.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders is avoiding answering a key question today. Does President Trump really believe that Democrats hate Jews? Sanders told reporters that they should ask the Democrats. She also defended Trump's criticism of Democrats as anti-Jewish and anti-Semitic. Democratic Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi said she is not for the impeachment of President Trump. Speaking today on Capitol Hill, the California Democrat said impeachment is divisive and she does not think Congress should go down that path. Milwaukee's hosting the 2020 Democratic National Convention. In an announcement today, DNC Chairman Tom Perez said the nomination for what will likely be the most important election in a lifetime is not far off.
490 days, we will have a discussion about how to retake our democracy in the city of Milwaukee. That discussion will not only ripple across Lake Michigan, it will ripple across the world.
Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
If you're looking for a full or part-time sales position and you have radio, TV, or print media experience, KCAA has a great opportunity waiting for you that pays the highest commissions in the market. KCAA is the only station in the IE that broadcasts on 3 frequencies, so advertisers receive 3 ads for 1 low rate. This makes KCAA a must-buy for every local business. If you're interested in a sales position with us, email ceo@kcaaradio.com.
It's time to make the Tri-City Center in Redlands a regular part of your weekly shopping experience. Tri-City is home to a wide assortment of quality businesses, including the all-new Ocean Aquatics. Check out their variety of exotic tropical fish, along with fish food, accessories, and tanks of all shapes and sizes. The Tri-City Center is located just off of Alabama and the Tennessee exits in Redlands. Visit the Tri-City Center today and find out why it's called the Mall with a Heart.
Bob Vila here with my home improvement tip of the day. Though garage doors do a pretty good job of keeping bad guys away from your car, they're not so good at keeping out the elements. That's especially true if the floor in your garage is uneven. What to do? Try this. Open the garage door so that the bottom is about head high. Cut a length of 3/4 inch foam pipe insulation to fit the width of the door. Then position the insulation against the bottom of the door with the slit facing down. Next, spread the slit in the insulation and use a screw gun or electric drill to attach the insulation to the bottom of the door. To keep the screws from tearing through the insulation, you'll probably want to add washers around the heads of the screws. Pipe insulation doesn't exactly add to curb appeal, so if you don't want it poking out the bottom of the door so it's visible from the street, just drive your screws a little more towards the backside of the door than the front. Get more info at bobvila.com and right here at home with me, Bob Vila.
Get all the facts, all you need to know on KCAA Radio.
And now, it's For the People with Judge Herb Dodell.
Okay, well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You know, we've done about 60 or 70 radio shows, right, Gary, from the beginning?
Yeah, at least that.
So what happens is you end up repeating yourself sometimes. Because I've been listening to some of the old shows, and I said, yeah, I'd like to do that. I should kind of repeat that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Because many of the people have not heard 70 shows. Probably only me.
Or me too. What do you mean, just you?
Yeah, it's the two of us. No, there's some I think some relatives listen to them all too.
Yeah, my mom listens to every one of my shows, so I get it.
The bottom line is there are topics that come up, and they're evolving. And sometimes it makes sense when people ask about a particular subject for, a particular period of time, even though we may have done a show like it a year ago, maybe even more. Sometimes it's really worth repeating because the subject's worth repeating.
Yeah.
And we don't know if anybody had heard that show in the past anyway.
Plus, there's stuff in the news that pertains to those shows in the past.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes if you listen to the shows like a year ago, we talked about subjects that are no longer relevant to anything.
Right.
And yet there's some that are relevant every single day and are evolving in a way that there's new information to share. Because it really is sharing it. So I got a bunch of calls recently because I keep track, of people who are calling and what subjects they're interested in. I thought last week's show was really very, very good. We did with the lawyer who specialized in domestic violence and child custody and
divorces.
That's a subject that's going to be going on forever.
Please.
As long as people fight with each other in a family way, that's going to happen. And I think what was really good about it was we provided a lot of information. And so what I want to do today is provide information. We have like 4 purposes of the show. One is information, to try to just get people to know about a subject matter that might be of interest to them. It might be something that comes up in their lives, informational. I mean, the second is to just give guidelines, no advice, but guidelines as to what you can expect and what the procedures may be and where you should go. And even though I'm talking a lot about California law because that's where I'm practicing, the fact is it's a national show. And I was asked to do a show in New Jersey.
Cool.
So I don't know much about New Jersey law, other than it's across the bridge from Manhattan, where I do have a license. But one of the things that seems to interest people, I guess people drink everywhere.
Oh, please, especially on the East Coast. It's so freezing cold. Everybody's drinking there.
So people want to know about driving under the influence cases. We had done a show about it. We didn't get into real detail. So I took a look at my notes and actually went online to check some things, especially looking into New Jersey, to see what their laws are regarding driving under the influence cases. And you know what? They're pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And I suspect that in all 50 states, there's going to be a law that pertains to that subject matter, whether the penalties are going to be different, maybe, or priors may be treated differently, probation may be treated differently, various programs may be treated differently, but for the most part, they're pretty standard.
Is the drinking age there 18? I think it is, actually.
In New Jersey?
Yeah. I'm not sure, but I thought it was 18.
It was 18 when I was growing up in New York State.
Yeah, I think it's 18 in Jersey. You know what? I'll look it up and I'll find out.
I don't even know what the drinking age is in California.
Oh, it's 21.
It is?
Oh, yeah, it's 21. Yes. The drinking age is 21. I know that.
So when they ask me for an ID, I'm okay.
You're cool. I mean, I'm even cool now.
If anybody's asking me for ID, if I want to buy a drink, they need to see an optometrist or somebody.
The only good thing about getting old, Judge, is that you don't get carded anymore. People don't, especially now. I mean, for me, it's just like, except for at Rite Aid when I go buy beer or whatever, or wine, they always card you. No, look, if you go to a Rite Aid,
I want to do that just for the excitement.
Yeah, go to my Rite Aid I go on Ventura and Topanga, and they literally have to card everybody. I go because I mean, it was sort of like, why are you carding me? You know I'm way older than 21, but they'll card you. They will. I guarantee you. Check it out.
definitely, if they think I'm not over 21, they have a big problem.
I'm just telling you. How about me? What do I look? Do I look like?
Well, you're a possibility. You were
please.
You were just an old-looking 21.
Twice plus. All right. Oh, by the way, the legislature lowered New Jersey's drinking age to 18 in 1973 and raised it to 19 in 1980. So
it's 19?
It's yes, it is 19 years old. By the way, New York did raise its legal age of drinking from 18 to 19. They did it last year. So it's 19.
So it's not. I can't see the real difference between 18 and 19.
I don't see it either, but that's what they did.
But anyway, we want to talk about that today because that's informational. The third thing we do is we try to put in a little humor whenever we can.
Very little.
And you're
sorry.
You're it.
I'm the humor.
You're the humor in the show.
The good humor, man. Okay.
No, you're the humor in the show. There's no question about it.
Thank you.
Questions we have no guest today.
And by the way, you have humor too. The judge is funny. If personally, you've got a great sense of humor.
Dry.
Very dry, like a martini.
Not like Dick Nixon's martini. Oh, we don't call him Dick anymore.
Not Dick. Tricky Dick. Isn't that?
You ever wonder why they changed that? He used to call him Dick, and they don't call him Dick anymore.
Well, we know that. I mean, why?
Why do you think that was?
Because that's a derogatory name, calling somebody
a dick.
Exactly. Did they censor that right there?
I don't know, but
did he censor the judge?
There's a show on right now, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's called
Tricky Dick.
Tricky Dick or Dirty Tricks?
No, it's called Tricky Dick. It's on CNN. They're doing a special on him.
I just was somebody.
Sons of
Somebody told me the other day, and I really didn't know it before, that a lot of the things that Roger Stone has recommended, there's his rules, deny everything.
That's right. Deny.
Never be on a defense. Give everybody full name. It's all out of Stone's playbook.
That's right.
But you know where he got it from? He didn't.
From me.
No, he didn't. He didn't get it from Nixon.
Where did he get it from?
He got it from Nixon indirectly because Nixon got it from Roy Cohn.
Roy Cohn,
that guy was a bad guy.
He's an attorney, right?
He was an attorney. He was one of the attorneys in the McCarthy hearings.
Yeah,
he was not a terrific guy. And he was the guy that kind of designed this political approach to the way things are done. That's where Nixon learned it all.
I never tell a lie, Judge. Never.
And your president is not a crook.
I am not a crook. Let me make this perfectly clear.
Well,
I love Roger Stone's tattoo of me on his back.
I wonder if he ever saw it.
That is
Roger said, "Let's go for a swim" or anything.
Maybe we can lifted the gag order now.
I don't know. Today was supposed to be the hearing.
Oh, really? Well, I haven't seen any news
I had the radio and I didn't hear anything about it. But
I haven't seen anything.
One of these days he's going to stick his foot in it and he's not going to be able to pull it out.
Oh.
He keeps doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
But let's get on to drinking and driving.
Let's get on to drinking and driving because I did it many times.
Well, one of the things we always say to people is, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you get busted, what do you do?
I went to jail, Judge.
You actually
Van Nuys.
The Van Nuys jail's not that bad.
It ain't that bad. Oh, I should tell
some
you.
of them are horrible.
I should tell you the story about how I actually did get a DUI back in 1996 with my future wife. And I'll tell you, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it after the break or whatever. But it's an interesting story, actually.
But there's interesting possibilities. One of the things that's out there is advertising. Everybody knows that.
Right.
You see all these commercials. Friends don't let friends plead guilty.
Well, they have it on the freeways.
It's on the back of the bus.
They have it everywhere, man. Don't drink and drive. We know.
Well,
you're not supposed to. That's stupid to do it nowadays.
Well, the penalties are draconian. Most people don't know what the penalties are.
Yeah.
It's not only the potential of going to jail. It's generally a misdemeanor. And we've explained the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony. A misdemeanor is a crime, just like a felony is. But for a misdemeanor, maximum penalty is a year in the county jail, a fine, or both. Felonies start at a year with the fine or both as well. But for misdemeanors, there's a whole different set of rules.
You don't want to get busted drinking and driving. It costs you so much. It's unbelievable.
It's in the thousands now.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But the question is about the lawyers. So one of the things we're going to talk about are the lawyers today.
Okay, cool.
And we'll do that right after the break.
1050 AM, KCAA.
Herb Dodell is a lawyer and a judge for the people. Having served as a Superior Court judge, presiding over more than 9,000 cases, he has witnessed firsthand how complicated and corrupt the legal system can be. His goal is to show how things really work in the legal system so that people can navigate the legal system in the best way for them. Many people often feel marginalized by the legal system and are uninformed about how to proceed when unfortunate circumstances arise in their life. Judge Herb will pull back the curtain, lift the veil, so people can truly understand their rights, have access to top legal personnel that they can trust, and have knowledge about how things work so they can make better choices. Judge Herb isn't just knowledgeable. His integrity and spiritual values are truly what make him different. He cares about democratizing access and information for all and desires to turn on the light so the people, you, can benefit. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
Okay, so we started out talking about the lawyers, and the first question I guess you have to ask yourself is, do you need a lawyer?
Well, I actually did get a DUI back in 1996. It's a long story. I just told you off the air, and we don't have to get into it. But I had a lot of friends because my dad was an attorney. I had a lot of friends that were lawyers, so I just asked one of them to handle it for me. My dad had just died like 4 months before that, and I was in a really weird state of mind. And so I did get a lawyer. It didn't cost me a whole lot because he did it for me, as a friend. But it did cost me a few bucks. But go ahead.
It's a number that doesn't really mean anything because you don't know
really
how they
need
get
one.
Well, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
For example, if you what they call blow a number that's greater than 0.08, let's say you blow a 1.1 or 1.2. There's no lawyer that's going to really do much for you unless you can find some fault in the driving. In other words, there's a rule. It's called the 3-hour rule. Let's say, for example, that you really are loaded, you had been drinking and you're tired and you pull over the side of the road. It's not a freeway. It's a kind of a country road or less traveled road, and you're sleeping in the car, and the cops come by, flash the lights, and stop you, and you smell. And you're still whacked from all the drinking you've been doing, and you get out of the car and you have what's called a field sobriety test. And you don't do very well with that one either. Can they really arrest you for drunk driving?
Of course they can.
No, they can't.
Well, I mean, I think
3 hours because they have to put you behind the wheel of the car. A moving car.
Well, I mean, hold on. So I've heard people getting DUIs from being being on the road, pulled over, and passing out, and then the cops come and get them and arrest them.
The rule is they got to put you behind the wheel less than 3 hours from the time that you do the test.
Really?
Yep.
Well, that's good to know.
So every now and again, that's why I'm talking about. The
No, I'm
show
saying
being
I didn't know that.
informational.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I'm going to talk about GERD later too. You know
GERD?
what GERD is?
I have no idea.
GERD is it's like acid reflux. When you kind of belch up things, it's called GERD. It could be your friend. GERD could be your buddy.
GERD is your friend.
It could be, along with other things.
Let me ask a question really quick, because we're talking about being pulled over on the road. And I've considered, I don't drink and drive anymore. I haven't, thank God, knock on wood. I just don't do it after that experience I went through. I did, because it is a very traumatic experience and it costs you a lot of money. But let's just say somebody does have a couple cocktails and they're afraid and they have to leave, they have to go somewhere, and they pull over. Would just like they put their keys somewhere, or that's what I've always thought. If the keys are in the ignition, you could get nailed because you're still on the road. How about they weren't in there? How about they were like underneath the seat or something like that?
I don't think it makes any difference.
Really? Okay.
There's also some, I suppose, physiological reasons too. We'll get to GERD in a minute. But if you were to sit down and throw in a couple of quick shots of tequila, boom, 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 2-3 shots.
Right.
And they took your breathalyzer result right then and there.
Through the roof.
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Really?
But if you took it a half hour later, a lot.
Okay.
So it takes time.
To absorb in the body.
Right.
Okay.
And so there's an argument has been made many times by good lawyers that, when they took the breathalyzer, the result really was not accurate because the drinking had taken place within a short period of time or whatever it is, because it elevates as you wait. And so if you hit it the right time, and if you take it, say, 2 hours later, it might be dropping.
Right.
And so one of the arguments that lawyers make is that the breathalyzer result that they're using to convict you in the criminal case is inaccurate. And that's been an argument that's been made many, many times. It still comes back to the question is, do you need a lawyer? If you're blowing a 1.2 or anything like that, then the chances are not much is going to be done for you by any lawyer.
You're going to get nailed.
And they're going to charge you a lot of money. Most of the time for misdemeanors, and again, this is a national show. I'm only talking about California law, but generally speaking, the laws are pretty much the same in most places. You need to consult with somebody local. I'm not giving anybody any advice. The fact of the matter is that there are some very, very good lawyers who can win some very tough cases. But who are they? How do you know how good that lawyer is? I mean, are you looking on the wall in the jail cell? Call us if you're in jail at 3 a.m. or if you're blue at 1.2 or whatever it is. In fact, in the book, I have attached to it in the appendices what's called a plea and waiver form. A plea and waiver form is something that you can pick up in the court, in the courtroom, which basically waives certain constitutional rights, right of cross-examination, and things like that, because you're going to make a deal. It's basically a deal. And in the deal, it already provides what the range of penalties is, how much it's going to cost you in dollars, how much it's going to cost you in time, what programs you have to go into. And most every court in almost every state, if not in all states, have drinking and driving rehab type programs that you have to go to.
Yeah, you have to go to AA meetings.
You got to go to meetings, and if you don't go to the meetings, it's a violation of your probation.
Right.
And a violation of probation carries with it a substantial risk, because if you generally the first violation, they don't do much about it. They usually just revoke the probation, reinstate it on different terms and conditions. Maybe it's you do a weekend picking up the trash, or you work at Caltrans. But, if you look at Caltrans, these people on the side of the road that are cleaning up everything, a lot of them are people who are doing time.
Yeah, no. Well,
they're not Caltrans employees.
All of them are almost.
They're all, that, or you go to the beach and you sweep up the trash.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, they can impose whatever sentence they want. I mentioned it, I guess, a couple of weeks ago when we did the show on judges. Discretionary calls.
Yes.
And so some lawyers know the system, know the judges, know the DAs, easier to make a deal. But if you're one of those people that hasn't got a negotiable case, and there are some cases that are really not that negotiable, you can do this yourself.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you a question. That leads to my next question. Because a lot of people are intimidated to go there without a lawyer because they really don't know how to go about it. Can you, as a person, let's say I want to go. You as a person, no, I'm just saying, you as a person out there, if they want to approach the district attorney to talk about their case, are they approachable?
Yes.
Okay.
You walk over, usually it's...
to the bailiff, or do you walk to the DA?
Well, you know which side the DA is on. Usually they're on the side closest to the jury rail if the courtroom has a place for juries.
Okay.
Or in most courts, it has on it people and defendants, so you know which side to stand on.
Because a lot of people are intimidated to approach the district attorney, and that's why they want to get a lawyer.
That's probably a reasonable situation. Many people walking into a courtroom have never been in a courtroom before. They see people walking around with guns on their hips, and a bunch of clerks running around, and somebody sitting up there with a robe on. You bet it's intimidating.
Yeah.
That's intimidating to brand new lawyers, I would suspect as well. But you walk over to the DA.
So as a person, as a person that's been charged with whatever, DUI or whatever it is, you can approach the DA to talk about your case.
Yeah, you just basically walk up and say, I'm such and such, case number, because your case number you have on your arraignment information. And can I talk to you for a minute? Sure. The problem with that generally is that these courtrooms are loaded.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
It's like a cattle car.
That's why I asked.
There are sometimes, if you go to, they usually have very, very large courtrooms, even though they're arraignment courts.
It's packed.
Packed. Very hard to get attention of somebody who's handling a very substantial calendar. I mean, I told the story when I was a DA in Inglewood, when I first started out, we had 110 cases that day. And Judge Donahue called us in, both sides, the public defender and us, and any private counsel were hanging around at the time, and said, go out there and settle these cases. We can't have this kind of calendar, because tomorrow having a calendar that's going to be the same thing. They're hanging out in the streets by now. There wasn't enough room in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Because there were so many cases. So a lawyer who's familiar with that DA, usually it's a DA, in certain areas, because of their misdemeanors, they're handled by the city attorneys. Felonies are handled by the district attorneys, generally speaking. And so you know somebody who's been in that court and goes to that court, once a week, twice a week, on a regular basis. It's hi Harry, hi Bill,
Yeah.
And it may be easier to make a deal, but if you haven't got a dealable case, what difference is it ultimately going to make? They don't have the authority. The calendar deputy, that's what it's called, the calendar deputy, doesn't have authority to make those kinds of deals anymore. We used to do that if it was like a 0.07, 0.09. Okay, we'd give them what was called a wet reckless.
Yeah, wet and reckless.
A wet reckless is a far better deal for, which I'll explain in a minute, far better deal for a defendant than getting convicted of, we used to call them deuces. The section used to be called 23102. There was a 2 on the beginning and a 2 at the end. That's how we always remember the
deuces. Huh?
It was a deuce.
Okay.
And you may be able to get some flexibility if you can show the driving was good, or you have an alibi witness who says, I was with him all day and he had 1 glass of wine. You could get a shot, but you have to win against the machine. And I'll tell you that it's so imperfect. Another, when I was a DA case, I was assigned a drunk driving case to prosecute. And I'll never forget it. It was the 605 freeway was brand new. And this guy, he blew a 3.5.
A 0.35. 0.35.
You're dead at 4.
Right, I know. I got it.
He was close to death at 3.5. And he was driving. His driving wasn't that bad. He was a professional drinker. The guy was...
He's a professional alcoholic.
He probably had a degree in it. But he was a truck driver, and he couldn't afford to lose, because he would lose his license and a job.
Yeah.
So he had an experienced lawyer, and I had about 3 weeks in the job. I was brand new, maybe a month or so. And because after your training, they send you out to be trained.
Right.
And I was pretty new at the job. I lost a 3.5.
You lost it?
I lost it.
Wow.
The jury didn't believe that the machine was accurate, because nobody could be driving as well as he was driving.
I mean, that's
if
crazy.
He was that drunk.
That's crazy.
The number was too high.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be dead. Like you said, it's almost like death.
4. In fact, I asked some physician around, I said, what does it take to be lethal? 4.0, you're done. This guy was 3.5.
That's crazy.
And he had a big red face, too. I mean, the guy he'd been doing this for a long time.
Yeah,
This was not new for him. And then we'll bring in GERD. We're going to talk about GERD?
Okay, well, sure. Sure, GERD.
I just kind of like the name, GERD.
Sounds disgusting.
I think I had an Aunt GERD.
Aunt GERD?
No, it was Aunt GERD. But
GERD sounds like you're throwing up or something.
What it does, it's kind of like that, actually.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it right after the break.
Hey, by the way, the judge's book, it's revised.
Revised.
From the trench to the bench.
New picture on the back cover.
Can't wait to see it. Go to Amazon.com. Check it out. We'll be back with the judge after this.
DC Talk Radio, 1050 AM, KCAA.
In his book, From the Trench to the Bench, Judge Herb Dodell demystifies the legal system, including both civil and criminal, the lawyers, the judges, and the process. As a judge, former deputy district attorney, and criminal defense attorney, he knows the legal system. He has the inside information that you need to pick a lawyer, and he's here to give it to you. No matter what you're facing that makes you think you may need a lawyer, Judge Herb will shed valuable light on your situation and reveal your best options and many secrets of how the judicial system actually works. To find out more about how the legal system really works, you can get your copy of Judge Herb Dodell's eye-opening book, From the Trench to the Bench, at Amazon.com.
Okay, so we're talking about GERD. The machine is really the most important piece of evidence in a criminal prosecution for driving under the influence, with the exception of the officer's observations. And if the officer doesn't really observe very much, you make a left-hand turn or whatever it is, and it's not that bad, it's the machine. So how does it work? You get stopped. It's not 3 o'clock in the morning and you're not sleeping on the side of the road. You're driving and you get pulled over. And they detect the smell of alcohol. The first thing they do is say, get out of the car. Generally, they don't do that. In many crimes, they don't want you to get out of the car.
Most crimes or most stops, they don't want you getting out of the car. Even a traffic stop.
And you'll notice, and they teach this in the academy, that when there's two officers, one of them stands to the rear on the passenger side as kind of like the backup and watching the other officer do the thing. And they conduct what they call a field sobriety test. One of them is that they will shine a flashlight in your eyes.
Hated that.
And they're looking for eye movements. There's certain things called nystagmus, which means if it flickers or it shakes or whatever it is, it means you're under the influence of alcohol. They'll make you stand on one foot, count the alphabet backwards.
Walk in a straight line.
Walk in a straight line, which is a great story. I think I may have told that one. I'll tell it now. I once had a case, and it was really dependent on whether or not the field sobriety test was really accurate to show that he was really drinking. And it was a great ending to this story, too. And my guy wore orthopedic shoes. They were different. They weren't the same size, or one had a bigger heel, because he had an issue with walking and balance. So he had specially made shoes. I took one of the shoes, and I put it on the jury rail. The jury rail is what the jury looks over. And I said to the jury, this guy couldn't walk a straight line no matter what. You look at his shoes. Got a not guilty.
Wow. That's great.
Got a not guilty.
That's great.
And the guy owned a big yacht, sailboat, big sailboat. He was running out of money. He was having cash flow issues. So he gave me the boat for the weekend. I took up a whole bunch of people out to Catalina.
Oh, that's nice.
That's why I remember the story so well.
That's great. That's cool.
But the bottom line was still ignoring GERD. The machine.
I'm not ignoring it.
The
You
machine.
are. Go ahead.
The machine.
Talk about it.
So if you have a medical condition like GERD, it'll mess up the machine. Because what it measures is a certain kind of alcohol in the breath. And if you are regurgitating, or you have this physical thing called GERD, acid reflux, then it's going to mess up the machine. In fact, I think one of my first DUI cases that I handled, I had made the argument that the defendant was chewing gum at the time, and just before they did the breathalyzer,
Mm-hmm.
and that threw the machine off. And every now and again, they don't calibrate it like they're supposed to do it every certain period of time. It says so in the statute.
Right.
And sometimes they don't do it. You can get lucky. But the chances are a big high number is not going to do much with a lawyer. And lawyers will make what they call motions, a motion to suppress evidence, which gets granted about the same amount of times as you would win the lottery. I mean, it doesn't happen. And in most DUI cases, and they're called, other than DUI, they're called DWI, there's a whole bunch of names for it, is the need to go to these classes. And if you're convicted of a DUI versus a wet reckless, it makes a difference of what kind of classes, if any.
Plus, the thing that really, when I got it back in the day, or 25 years ago, or whatever it was, is that they suspend your license. I don't know if it's changed any, but they suspend your license for 30 days. And then after that, you have to drive on a restricted license for, I think it's, I forget. I don't know if it's 6 months or a year or 3 years. All I know is if I had just a .001, of alcohol in my system and they stopped me, I could have got a second DUI. So, I mean, that was the bummer, is that I was actually had a suspended license for 30 days, and that's what they give you here in California.
Well, what happens in California, and I suspect it happens in most jurisdictions, is when they take you down to the jailhouse to be booked and to take the other three choices, you have three choices.
Right.
Blood, breath, or urine. And people say, which one should I take? I would always tell people, take the breath. Number one, it's instant. If you do blood or urine, you got to hang out. It takes time to get the results.
So a lot of people do the blood because they want to delay it. So,
they're looking for the 3 hours.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, there's methodology for it.
Yeah.
But the law enforcement people are very well aware of what's required. And they don't want to, unless they're at the end of a shift, they want to go home. They don't want to sit down and do paperwork. I mean, these things that happen. One of the things that I found was most interesting when I was in the DA's office, I was at that time going with a gal who was a flight attendant. So she was out of town a lot, so I had nothing to do. I'd ride with the cops. I would go along in the police car.
Sounds so much like fun.
It was terrific. I had such a great time. And then I'd go down to the precinct, when they made an arrest and everything else, and watch the whole booking process and talk to the other officers and everything. That was really fun. But back to the three tests. I want to get off the chart here. The breathalyzer is the most attackable. The problem is that you have to hire people to attack it. You need experts. Experts are expensive. So the person who can afford it may be able to do better with a real experienced criminal lawyer that does this exclusively or almost exclusively, and get the right kind of experts. If you want to bring in a doctor to talk about something like GERD, for example, you are going to pay for that. And doctors are charging $5,000 for a half a day. And one of the things about criminal law is you hang out a lot. You go, it says you have to show up at 8:30. Nothing happens at 8:30.
Nothing. The judge doesn't even show up.
Judge doesn't show up till 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock, whatever it is, and everybody's sitting around.
It's usually about 9:30.
You just sit around.
Yeah, it is. It's torture. It's pure torture.
Criminal law is waiting around all the time.
Yeah, it's torture.
And continuances and more continuances and whatever. Some people will exercise their right to what's called a speedy trial. The Constitution requires a speedy trial. But if you don't want a speedy trial, you do what they call, quote, waive time, end quote, so that they don't have to bring you to trial within a certain period of time. If there's bail involved, normally they don't charge bail on driving under the influence cases. They generally wait till you sober up and then let you go. You can't drive.
Yeah.
They take your license away from you at the jail. You no longer have a license.
Right. They do. They take your license away.
And then you go to court for an arraignment. Now, for misdemeanors, in California, we have a code section, 977 it's called. And everybody that appears for a non-appearing defendant, a lawyer appearing for non-appearing defendant, will say, I'm here 977. In other words, the client's not showing up, you are there for the client. And so you get what's called a police report at that time at the arraignment, and you can make a request for a special license. To and from work usually is what it is, to and from school, and the DMV almost automatically grants those.
Really? Sure, Judge? Because they suspended my license automatically for 30 days. I mean, and my lawyer, I mean, I had an attorney.
Oh, yeah, you would end up getting it suspended, but you make a request for a special license, it's almost automatic that they'll give you that license. And
it must have changed in the last few years.
Except there's a serious exception, and this is a question that comes up all the time. And if anybody is listening to this and find themselves in this kind of situation, they say you want the blood, breath, or urine, and you say, I don't want any of them. You don't have to do it. But they take your license away automatically for a year in California. Automatic. No defense. It almost doesn't matter what the outcome of the case is. Even if you're lucky at some point and you plead to a wet reckless, failure to take the test, it's called the implied consent law. What it comes down to, since we're giving information today, is that driving and having a driver's license is considered a privilege, not considered a right. Privilege. Taking your rights away requires a lot more what's called due process. But for purposes of these kinds of situations, it's a whole different paradigm. So the Department of Motor Vehicles is much tougher. Hard to win at the DMV. So when I see these ads, we win regularly at the DMV, that's, as I think President Trump said the other day, that's bullshit. It really is. It's nonsense.
Shit.
Because it doesn't happen. Bullshit. Okay. Didn't I say that?
I hope you did.
Well, whatever. If Trump can say it, so can I.
Okay. Tell that to Fred Lundgren.
Hey, Fred, if you're listening, just a human guy. Anyway, the bottom line really is that you rarely win at the DMV.
Right.
You got the ability, if you can show that the driving was not bad or anything else, but these are civil servants who are not lawyers. They're not judges. They're bored. They don't want to be there. They hear all these hearings. It's done in basically an office.
And they do it all the time.
Every day. And I've been to many, many of them over the years. You rarely get a break from the DMV. Rarely. I had a guy who was on probation, and he had one more week to go for a 2-year probation or whatever it was, and it was his birthday. And he was out. He played at one of these piano bars, and somebody bought him a drink. Stopped him on the freeway. I couldn't get the DMV to move. They wouldn't budge. Nailed.
I'm telling you, that's what I said. When I said you can't even have a .001 if you're driving under probation, under your probation.
That's right. If you are on probation and you get popped for anything, that's
matter.
When you need a lawyer.
Yeah, I mean
that's when you want to renegotiate your suspension and your probationary period and whatever. Now, if you're looking at a wet reckless,
and by the way, they consider that a second DUI.
Not if it's a reckless.
I'm telling you now, that's what they told me.
Oh, that's right. If it's a second offense.
Yeah, and you have a .0001, and they pull you over, and they find that little amount. That is considered a second DUI.
Only if you're convicted.
Well, if you're convicted, of course, if you're convicted.
If you're convicted, it is a second.
But I mean, they charge. It's
mandatory jail time.
They do charge you for a second DUI. I mean, you're going to get arrested. I mean, I'm just telling people
you can get
out
arrested.
there.
Look, people don't know the difference between arrest and a conviction.
I understand.
Arrest is an accusation.
Well, I mean, you're still going to have to go to jail, and you have to go through the whole thing and be charged with a second DUI. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
You could be.
Because people don't understand that, and they'll go out there and maybe have one DUI. They're under a 3-year probation. At least I was. And if you get popped with you just take a sip and they nail you and pull you over, it's a second DUI. I'm just trying to tell the people, we're trying to be informative.
It's charged.
Well, they charge you.
Some good lawyers, what they'll do in making some kind of plea deal, they'll ask, it's called a motion to strike.
Yeah.
You strike the prior. It's called striking the prior.
Right.
You strike the prior, then you're not facing any mandatory jail time. But you're pleading guilty, what they call straight up. And that means you're going to be sentenced as a first-time offender. So you may save some of the additional amount of money. The fine is much greater. There's a potential for incarceration for a second. A third one, even worse. The fourth one is a felony. So those are some of the general outlines. We're going to talk a little bit more about it right after the break.
Did you ever meet a lawyer that was for the people? Someone who had the best interests of the people at heart? Herb Dodell has been a lawyer for more than 50 years and has been a Superior Court judge for 9 years, having presided over more than 9,000 cases. In this show, he will reveal the secrets of how things really work in the legal system, so you can maximize your position and benefit most when you're in trouble and need someone on your side to simplify the process for you. For more information, email the judge at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. That's askjudgeherb@gmail.com.
Okay, so, we're talking about potential penalties. In California, there's a 10-year period. In other words, if your last conviction was more than 10 years ago, it's not considered a second offense. So it's not a forever. But the question is about lawyers. Advertising that all these cases are going to end up favorably for you doesn't really happen that way. There are some very good lawyers that do this, and they will find, whether it's the 3-hour rule or it's some other technicality or it's an attack on the equipment or whatever it is, they know how to deal with that.
But it really has to be, doesn't have to be really, I mean, you're talking about, something that's like a 0.08 or right on the cusp, you know what I mean?
That one is a negotiable. That's
what I'm saying.
A 0.08 is negotiable.
Right.
Because you now look at the driving. Now, I had a case years ago where they pulled over this young lady and she had 2 friends with her in the car. And her driving was not bad. She just made an illegal U-turn or something. And she did the field sobriety. They took her in and whatever, and had to defend her on it. And it was a question about the driving. So what I did was I had the 2 people in the car talk about her driving. They had just come from a local bar. It was her last day on her job. They were out celebrating, and they each had 1 glass of wine. So I went back to the bar where they had been, restaurant, and I got the receipt showing that there were 3 glasses of wine for the 3 girls. I worked it into a reckless, a dry reckless. There's a difference between a dry reckless and a wet reckless. It's in California, and it's defined. Reckless really means that it's in disregard of other people's rights on the road. And even though most of these pleas of wet recklesses or otherwise, it's not really reckless driving. It's just a way to reduce something. In fact, a lot of times you have assault and battery cases or mutual combat cases, whatever. They end up getting pled to what's called a 415, which is disturbing the peace, which is about the lowest you can get on the scale, disturbing the peace, or a trespass. Some things end up as trespass. That's your job as a lawyer, to get the lowest that you can possibly get.
Right.
On any particular case. They're defensible. DUI cases are defensible, but they're tougher. You got to keep in mind that prosecution has that burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt on every single one of these.
They're so tough, though, Judge. I mean,
they are tough, but you know what? Jurors, if you do it and you're entitled to a jury trial, on that jury of 12, somebody's a drinker. Statistically.
Of course.
They don't want. They are going to relate to the defendant, and all you need as a defense lawyer is one.
Yeah.
We have an old expression in the criminal law: if you can hang him, you can beat him. We're not talking about hanging him from the tree. We're talking about if you can
hang
jury is a win. Although, I think over my career, I tried about a half a dozen cases twice. At least a half a dozen cases twice. Sometimes the prosecution will not refile. It's called filing. Sometimes they won't refile. Not necessarily on DUI cases, but in cases in general. And I think I told the story where I was defending Lee Trevino's caddy. I told you that story, I think.
Yeah.
He was accused of raping a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Which he didn't do. And
was it Herman? Was his name Herman?
No. Herman was the guy afterwards. I don't want to mention his name.
Okay, no, I just was wondering because I know the caddy Herman. I
Yeah, no, it wasn't him.
It wasn't him. Okay, that's why I want to clarify it.
Nice guy.
Okay.
They claimed that he climbed in through a window and he raped this 15-year-old girl. She was living with her aunt. But the aunt was having an affair with my client, and he was basically breaking it up because he wouldn't move in with her, and she was pissed.
Man,
and
women.
so she ended up reporting it as a rape.
Damn.
And I'm sure I told the story. She claimed that the guy had zipped up his pants.
Yeah.
And I went to trial, and I brought the pants that he was wearing, and I didn't show her the front part. I only showed her the back. I said, "Are these the pants?" "Yes, sir, they are." I turned them around. There was a button up. So he created doubt. Every criminal defense lawyer is looking for doubt. That's what you do when you're defending.
That's reasonable doubt right there.
And he had a key. I said, why would a guy climb through the window if he had a key? Enough to get the purpose of telling the story is it was 11-1 for not guilty. 11-1. And the one who was hanging out for guilty had a niece that had been raped.
Oh, wow.
Didn't tell us that in the voir dire.
You didn't know that?
No, we asked questions. She basically lied. She wanted to be on that jury. She was going to get even for her niece or somebody.
Yeah.
And they wanted to refile, and I pitched. His name was Berg, Judge Berg, Michael Berg. I pitched him on it. I said, look, they got 11 not guilties and one hangout who lied to us. I said, it's unfair to retry it. He says, I'm not letting them retry this case. He dismissed it in the interest of justice.
That's fair. That's a good judge.
He was a very good judge. He was a nice man, too. Yeah. But the bottom line is it's so variable what can happen to you. And the fines for wet recklessness are usually about half. They will not consider it a prior. You may not have to go to the school for very long. There are some definite benefits to a reckless, and you can on your application for employment, for example. Now there's some legislation. There's been some effort to make some changes to it to exculpate, or actually expunge from your record the prior conviction, and judges will generally do that. It's called 1203.4 in California. It's basically what happens is you make a motion after probation has been served. Can't be done before unless you expedite the conclusion of the probation. If you do that, that's the period of time. You make a pitch. If the court agrees, because you've been very good, a new plea is entered of not guilty, and you're found not guilty. Case is dismissed. So you no longer have to put on your application for employment that you have a prior. If you don't, you have to list a prior, otherwise you're lying to the prospective employer. And
they can check it out nowadays.
These days, it's like all the HR departments are using this database,
of course,
to show whatever it is. So there's definitely a benefit. And if you're on the cusp, so to speak, and you got a really good criminal lawyer that knows his or her business, it makes sense. Otherwise, why spend the money? You're going to make the same deal that lawyer's going to make.
They're going to give you the same, they had that certain criteria for almost all DUIs. I mean,
it's on the form. It's a form.
Yeah. So why get a lawyer when you can just, have to plead out to the same, things anyways? You're going to have to deal with the same things. Your license suspended.
Sometimes a lawyer is necessary, especially with priors.
Yeah, with priors, yeah.
Priors, probation issues, technical issues.
Or like you said, if it's on the cusp, if it's, very close to, being a 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 0.8 or 9, you may want to get a lawyer.
Well, it comes down to the bottom line question is, who do you pick as a lawyer? And I want to kind of tie it up for the end of the day.
Happy Parker. No.
I don't think he does that. I don't think he's been in court.
Pappy?
I don't know. I'm not going to make any comments about the advertising that goes on out there because, I've rendered my opinion many times.
We know.
And the fact is that many of these lawyers that advertise don't do the cases. They're basically just trying to bring in the business. It's a solicitation. In fact, if you can read that writing on the bottom of the screen, which is you almost need binoculars to read it. It says basically that they're going to refer it out.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. And so you get somebody you don't know. I would never hire a lawyer if I was out there in the public without sitting down in front of him or her and getting a visceral sense. Do you like that person? Is that person giving you the story? In the book, I have almost a whole chapter on how to pick a lawyer, because there are a lot of different criteria. You want to ask a lot of questions, but you're a layman. You don't know what questions to ask. Well, I give you all the questions to ask in the book. It's kind of an incentive to read.
No, that's cool. No,
if you're in that situation,
yeah, of course.
If you're finding yourself charged with a crime, and you want to know what to expect, what reasonably to expect, and what you should do procedurally, including the retention of a lawyer, you need to have the information from somebody who has the information to give to you.
It's like an encyclopedia of the law system.
Well, one of the things that got me inspired to do all of this, including writing the book, was to share the experience that I've had all these years to make it easier for people to face what is unfamiliar and uncertain and frightening.
Absolutely.
And all of those things, that if you know a little bit about what might reasonably happen and what you're facing, instead of hearing some lawyer tell you how good they're going to do for you, because they want the business. They're gonna give you a good song and dance about how things can be done. I'm not so sure that it ever happens that way, but not every lawyer is ethical. And you need to go and talk to somebody face to face. What are you going to do for me? What can I really expect? And listen to those answers. Some of them will give you the truth. But if the truth is what's going to send you out to do this on your own, they may not tell you that.
Yeah.
Because I got into a discussion with somebody last night, as a matter of fact, about lawyers' bills. Because when I was doing restraining order cases, one of the things that I did after a case was over is I looked to see if it was a prevailing party. There was always a prevailing party. The question was, who was it? And the lawyer would make a request for attorney's fees. They would file a declaration with bills and whatever. And I'd have to read them all to see whether or not they were legitimate or reasonable or necessary or anything like that. You'd be surprised what I would see on some of these bills.
Oh, I wouldn't.
The build-ups, demur. That wasn't any demurs in restraining order, but a particular type of motion, 6 hours. Now, I know from my experience how long it takes to do that kind of work.
Right.
It's cut and paste.
Yeah.
Take the name of the old client out, put in the new one, change the dates. Takes a half hour by a paralegal. And so you don't know. You're a layman. You have no idea what a demur is. And they could charge you 10 hours. And what is it? Oh, that was a motion to do such and such. Many of which are totally unnecessary. I'd want to know from that lawyer, what are you going to do? What's your first step? Oh, we're going to attack the arrest on constitutional grounds. It's called a 1538.5 motion to suppress. What's the chance of winning that? And how much is that going to cost me? Oh, we'll do that one for $2,500. Whatever the market will bear. And the bottom line is there's a great deal of dishonesty. Know what you're doing. Read up on it. Be prepared. And that's what you need to do if you're going to be facing that kind of situation.
And ask the lawyer, how much is it going to totally cost you? I mean, what is the total cost of this? Well, I don't know. We'll say, what's the average? Because I get this all the time when I'm asking somebody.
The average, from what I'm told, because I'm not out there defending criminal cases too much anymore, $2,500 to $5,000 if it's not complicated. Whether it's a plea at an arraignment, there's only one thing. If you've got to go to multiple appearances and you got a pretrial and you got to pick a jury or whatever, then obviously it's going to be a lot more. You want it to be as minimal as you can, and you want to know that they can only do what they need to do for your best interest, not theirs. So, I'm very cynical about lawyers to begin with.
Even though you are one. Okay, we got to go, Judge.
Whatever.
All right.
That's all I can say.
Hey, listen, my dad was a lawyer. I have much respect for all of you.
We work hard.
You do work your butt off. All right, listen.
We'll see you next week.
You want to get the judge's book, From the Trench to the Bench, it's available on Amazon.com. You just revised it. And if you
brand new,
and believe me, it's the Bible of law.
No, you should keep it on your shelf, because if anything ever comes out.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM.